Um, so welcome everyone to night 2 of Maydays. This evening's theme is Radical Aesthetics and Poetics. I'm Meera Govindasamy. I'm the Associate Director of the Studio for Media Activism and Critical Thought. In tonight's discussion, panelists will be sharing their experiences as artists in the pandemic and discussing how their art has helped them cope, helped others cope, how they're connecting with others, and what challenges they're facing. To end the event, we'll also get to hear some music from our final presenter, and everyone had a sneak peek earlier as you entered the meeting as well. So the studio is a Ryerson University-based research center dedicated to putting on social justice events that bring together artists, activists, and media makers of all kinds in order to challenge the status quo and help consider creative approaches to moving forward and supporting one another. Evidently, art in all its forms is near and dear to the hearts of everyone at the studio. I want to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you to our presenters, of course, the studio team, in particular, Jed, our incredible research assistant, Kala Evans, who created our graphics for this event, and our funder, the Faculty of Communication and Design at Ryerson. Before passing things off to Marusya, we're also going to do a land acknowledgement. So we're all located in different places at the moment, and while I am virtually with all of you, my physical self remains located downtown Toronto, where I'm a settler on traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas, and the Anishinaabe. Beyond simply acknowledging the settler nature of my presence here, because I don't think that that's nearly enough action to take, I want to share a link to the Native Women's Resource Center, where they're accepting donations. The center provides emergency support, including food, housing, and advocacy, as well as life-enhancing program, family support, upgrading skills, employment, and then finally cultural programming to urban Indigenous women and children. So if you're in a position to do so, I would encourage anyone who can to make a donation to this important community center. I know that they're struggling financially at the moment, and COVID has very disproportionately impacted Indigenous communities in cities as well as on reserves. And as Courtney Skye, who is one of our incredible speakers from yesterday, explained very eloquently, this disproportionate impact is made much worse by the lack of accurate data collected about the number of cases and deaths in Indigenous communities. So I will share that link now in the chat.
Okay, should I?
I just had a couple of housekeeping things as well. So if everyone can see on the bottom of their screen, you should be able to either see an option that says chat, or there should be an option to see more, and then you'll be able to see the chat function from there. So there you'll see where I've sent the link to everyone. So the chat is what we're going to use to have audience members ask questions to any of our speakers. You can ask questions anytime throughout the event, but we're going to save the questions until the end and do kind of like a panel style of questions. And instead of submitting your question to everyone, we ask that you submit your question just to Jed, who is marked as the host. And so you can send a message privately there, and no one else will see the question, and then Jed will be collecting those for me to ask to the presenters with our remaining time. Let me make sure that's all my housekeeping stuff I wanted to say. Oh, the event is being recorded, but the chat is not going to be recorded, and the recording won't be of anybody other than the speakers. So no need to worry about that. And with that, I will pass things off to the studio's director, Marusya Bociurkiw.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for gathering with us tonight, and thank you to our speakers for joining us. I felt that the best way to introduce an event on pandemic poetics and aesthetics is to do it poetically. So this is a kind of mashup of words and phrases from my own writing and that of our speakers today. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. There will always be a time before and a time after. How will this be remembered? When we gather together again, what will you write? What will you eat? What will you say? Will it be a pandemic encounter, ritual actions being together remotely, the lens of the ubiquitous webcam, virtual touch, remote intimacies, telematic histories, and the distributed gaze? If lack of support and recognition of non-binary artists on the margins exceeds the teleconferencing grid, what will pandemic do to storytelling, to healing? Mayday, Mayday, it's been an emergency for a long time. How will you live? How will you remember? What tales will you tell, you songwriter, you storyteller, you listener, you art maker and child of the earth, sending songs and ideas back and forth? Will a world binging on Netflix wake up to you, your home landscape, your Northern Ontario, your sticky mangoes, your subtle technologies? Artists are this pandemic's narrator and archivist, casualty and poster child, art with place, art out of place, art as isolation, isolation as art. When we gather together again, or even when we don't, what will you say? I'm going to introduce our first speaker now. I encountered Roberta Buiani's writing quite recently in a special COVID-19 collection of essays in the journal Topia, where she wrote about ideas of contagion and containment as they have been applied to refugees. And when I found out that she's also an interdisciplinary artist and media scholar and the artistic director of the Art Sci Salon at the Fields Institute of Research in Mathematical Sciences, I knew that she had to be part of this event. With the Art Sci Salon, she launched a series of experiments in squatting academia by repopulating abandoned spaces and cabinets across university campuses. And currently, she's rethinking how this activity can exist and be as meaningful in this new era of physical distancing. Roberta.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. And thanks for the very moving words that you pronounced at the beginning. So I'm gonna start my timer because I tend to speak a lot and share my screen. So, all right. So, so when I was first invited to this event, I initially was a little bit puzzled because the Art Sci Salon is a little bit of a niche, and within all the niches, it's a niche of a niche. Because in theory, the Art Sci Salon is is an outreach type of event that is part of the Fields Institute, which is a scientific institution. But we do not consider ourselves a science communication type of endeavor. And I'm gonna try and spend a couple of minutes to explain what it is that I'm doing. And what is this art and science or sci-art that I am sure most of the people in the audience do not know or know only tangentially. So what you see here is an installation by Nicole Clouston. By the way, all the artists I'm going to show are local artists, but I'm also dealing with a very international audience. Anyway, what is our art? Sorry, this is going a little bit too fast. What is sci-art or art sci? It's a growing interdisciplinary artistic practice that engages with a variety of scientific disciplines. So basically, what artists do is they engage with the scientific discourse. And this is a form of, it's not really a form of activism, but I do consider it as a very important activity because by engaging with the scientific discourse, they actually keep the sciences on its feet. It questions science and it tries to understand what kind of discourses and what kind of hegemonic discourses science is pushing onto us, and what kind of dynamics, also social, that occur within the sciences. And this is something that is very important, because most people, when they talk about art and when they talk about activism, they do not consider science as something that should be questioned, and they also don't know what actually science does as this field that is completely unquestionable. So what these artists do also is they use scientific instruments and processes that are done in the lab as media. So for example, they are working with bacteria, or they are working with viruses. So this is very important these days. Of course, they are working with bacteria and viruses that are innocuous, not the dangerous one. So what they do is they might or might not do science communication, but most of the times they don't do science communication, because science communication usually does communicate science and does make the audience understand science, while artists working at the intersection between art and science question science and collaborate with scientists and with labs. My hope for the Art Science Salon is to have a platform to facilitate critical dialogue between artists, scientists, scholars, and also professionals. We have a lot of makers who are part of our group. And I am very interested in knowing what the general public know and want to know about science. As part of the public mandate, and this is where the more engaged side of the Art Science Salon is it's a curatorial project, but it's a curatorial project on its own, in the sense that, as Marusya was mentioning, it's a squatting experiment more than a curatorial project. So, so you see here, these are like some of the events that we are doing. So you see in the fourth, like the one in the image in the corner is in an unconventional spot. It's actually at the entrance of a theater, and the other one, the other image next to it is a scientist, my collaborator Stephen Morris, who is actually playing a scientific instrument as a musical instrument. So these are the type of questions that we are asking. So what do we use scientific instruments for, and can we use them for something else? Can we disrupt the spaces that are given to us as something conventional? And here comes the type of work that I've been doing since 2014. So I started at the University of Toronto because it's near the Fields Institute where we are based on. And nearby, and especially in the, sorry, it keeps going back and forth. So especially around and in the proximity of scientific departments. So there's a lot of spaces that are abandoned. And these spaces they could be reused in other ways. And so these are some of the spaces that are being abandoned that I identified. So the idea is to identify these spaces and turn them into artworks. Artworks that respond or question the role of the sciences or the scientific discourse, or that use scientific instruments, like in this case that you see here, or scientific illustration, like in this case here. Or they question branches of science, like in this case, here we have a mash, like a design that questions the role of gynecology and its instruments to oppress women. Then we have international exhibitions, thanks to my 3 years long collaboration with an international networks, which I will go back to, where we every year we have a different topic. This year, the exhibition that we had was shut down 2 days after the opening. And the title was Becoming. But last year it was at the University of Toronto, and it was quite successful. And the title was Evolution, Revolution. And of course it was about all things evolution and as a revolution. So these are some images. These are local artists from Windsor, from Montreal, from Toronto. This is the Fields Institute, and this is a performance that we did last year where we utilized the entire space of the Institute, so up here and down here. And we got to invite some international artists from Berlin to do these type of performances. So now, what you just saw is like a bunch of projects that are very much site-specific. They're very intimate. They really make space for the audience because the audience is important. And even more so when the audience is coming into the university, which is a public space, which is treated by the admin as a private space. And so by opening up these spaces and turning them into artistic endeavors, we are actually trying to help the public reclaim the spaces within the university and make the science more humane and open up to make the public understand the ecologies of doing science and the difficulties and also the complexities of science. Because sometimes science is treated as something that is very simplistic and very straightforward, which is not. So now, all of these installations are very site-specific, as I said. And so this so-called descent of SARS-CoV-2 has brought us to temporary halt. So we were supposed to have a full month of events, and including many international artists and performances, and we were even ready to turn space at York University into a spa. And the reason for that is because this project, ironically, was titled Boundary Crossing, meaning that it voiced the necessity to rethink and bridge interdisciplinary boundaries, to reflect on the symbiotic relation and the interconnectedness between the body, its fluids, and other substances and inhabitants of the surrounding environment, and also to reflect on the borderless nature of viruses and bacteria. And this would allow us to also make a discourse about what it means for us to cross the border. What would a borderless world mean for us? What does having a border mean for bacteria and viruses, but also for bigger animals? As you probably know, and you have realized right now, the two things are very different. So after this, many people, so after, like when the pandemic started and everything was shut down, many people went online. And the thing is, by going onto Zoom, I thought that Zoom would defeat the whole role, the whole meaning of this project. And so I think I refused to be boxed. And so I decided to just press pause and say, okay, so we're gonna wait a little bit. So then this made me really think about these questions. So what is the role of the arts right now? Do they have to be productive and entertaining at any cost? Like many people are going on Zoom. So do we have to do this? do they have to be useful at any cost? So do we have to make PPE for people and for nurses at any cost? Do we have to do it to make art that is socially useful at any cost? Like in our case, there's no way we can do it. The only thing that we can do is, the other question that I have is the role of the arts that intersect and engage with science to principally communicate science? Or can we also comfort and help cope with the complexity and the uncertainty of the viral processes that are hitting us right now? And also some other related, like climate-related globalization-induced and capitalism-caused cataclysms, because it's all about that, right? So there's many interpolations and many connections that are to be found. So what I've been doing right now, this I did with my assistant Uda Aziz, who she's my graduate assistant, and we've been creating a gallery on Instagram with other presentations of SARS-CoV-2 and a representation of COVID-19. So I'll just make it roll a little bit, but. So here, what I realized in this month of reflection and rerouting, so I found that I do have a very large international community out there that is supportive and that has not dissolved in the past few months. And I went back to it over and over again. And in these months, this community has grown very much, and we've grown very much together. I also realized that the funding schemes that I was using before have somehow directed me to seek out that community, that very international community, because I received most of my funding from occasional donors and scientific funders, and they are tied to fund for travel. So now I am learning to reach out locally and build a new locally driven group. And this is my international group, the FEM meeting. It's very international. There's people from all over the world. And actually we are having an opening on Friday. It's a virtual opening, but we've been creating videos that are responding to the pandemic. And some of them are very personal and some of them are very, very cogent. And this is a performance that I did on Saturday where we were trying to do an experiment and say, okay, so we don't like Zoom, so what can we do? And it was a very complicated technology, which kind of like failed a little bit. But the results were actually quite hilarious. And I'm actually very happy with what we did. So in thanking you for joining me, I am very happy with the holistic approach that I take with my group, with the Arts High Salon. But I think that this is the right time for I'm gonna close this. This is the right time for the arts in general, and even more for the art and science community to start creating a momentum and start rethinking about what the arts could be in the future. So I'm pressing pause and I'm gonna wait for a couple of months, and then I will go back to this Boundary and Borders project of mine, which I want to explore because I think it's very current right now. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roberta. That was fantastic to hear from you. It was making me think about the importance of place and physical location in the initial project that you were doing. Made me think about ways that art, and especially activist art, can start to infiltrate learning spaces even online. And I'm curious to hopefully pick that up in the discussion as well. So thank you so much. So now I'd like to introduce to everyone our next presenter. Pree was raised in Montreal and went to school in Toronto. They are a child of immigrant settlers from Punjab As an artist educator, Pree's work centers the experiences of individuals who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. They have an interdisciplinary arts practice under the name Sticky Mangoes, and they co-founded the Non-Binary Color Collective. Pree is maintaining their artist practice during the pandemic and currently working on 2 research projects, one about improving services for trans youth and one about making art with place. I'm so excited to introduce Pree.
Hi, everyone. Just give me a moment to get set up here. All right, so I'm hoping that y'all can see me and hear me. Okay, yes, okay, I've got the thumbs up. So I'll kind of be talking a little bit more specifically about disability and creating artwork during the pandemic today. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself and the kind of work that I create. So I make art under the alias Sticky Mangoes, like Meera mentioned. I do watercolor painting, I do textile arts, mostly embroidery, jewelry making, lino, ceramics. So I'm kind of in, I committed to my arts practice about 2 years ago, and a big part of what I want to do is just try everything and see what feels best for me to communicate a message or just to create something that feels good, or converting concepts from my brain onto a medium. So I really want to try everything right now, and I've been trying to continue that during the pandemic as well, as best as I can. And then more recently, I started doing performance arts as well. So I keep that a little bit separate. I go under the name Gay Ram Masala for drag, and I'll be debuting at Toronto Pride over the internet, of course, in a couple weeks. So if you're interested in drag or gender performance, you could check that out. It's just, I only have an Instagram account for that right now. But I don't know, for some reason, I really want to compartmentalize the performance from the visual right now. So that's a bit separate, but it's something for me to think about kind of going forward. One of the prompts that us as a panel were given was, in the time of the global COVID-19 pandemic, how has social media shaped the social justice work, art, and or critical academic thought that you engage in? So for the purpose of today's panel and the limited time that we have, I'm gonna kind of be focusing on just talking about my engagement with community arts, as opposed to like research and other aspects as well. So for me specifically, I feel like it's been a really difficult balance to engage in social media and have it be this battle between inspiration and engaging in things that make me want to create things and try things and just do something, and then like a difficult balance between those inspirational things and then this kind of like difficult feeling of comparison, feeling like, you know, I'm not producing enough, or I'm not producing like things that are good enough to share, or I'm not doing enough as the next person. And I feel like this is extended like across media, in the sense where, you know, I'm seeing other people's like beautiful focaccia and I'm like, I definitely can't do that, and feeling kind of sad about my sandwiches, you know? So it's like definitely something that has bled into like other parts of my life as well. But it has been kind of like this difficult balance between like social media being really inspiring and also being really pressuring. So that's kind of like one of the first things that made me think of, trying to think about it in a more like, not to romanticize it, but to think about it in a more positive way, or in a way that I feel like it's not talked about as much. What I want to kind of point out is that social media has also helped for me to access a lot of different educational resources that weren't ever available before online. I'm thinking about a lot of resources around like food and food scarcity and food growth. I'm thinking about a lot of resources, or even in another realm, like medical appointments and things that I could never access before online that are, you know, I'm able to access from home. But yeah, thinking about a lot of resources that I now have access to, the fact that I'm able to foster community online, which a lot of other disabled folks and I were already doing, but I feel like able-bodied folks understand the value and like see a need for being like needing to do that. And so that has definitely been helpful in kind of like leveling the playing field, so to say, in needing to do things online or remotely participating. You know, in the past, if I would have said like, I would like to have a birthday party where, you know, I'd like it to be online and I want to be able to step away and go to bed when I'm ready, I feel like that would have been really absurd, whereas now that's become the norm. And the same thing goes for events like this as well. But yeah, it makes me think of the ways that we're able to maintain community and connection. And something that I was talking to my partner about yesterday was, you know, it's social media is helping us facilitate maintaining those relationships right now, but what's going to happen when like there's difficulties in those relationships, or if we just wanted to make new friends, like what is that going to look like? And those are some of the questions that I have. One of the other ways that social media has shaped the work that I engage in is also just thinking about mutual aid and being able to reach out to community members or collaborating on creative projects or community arts projects as well. And going into talking a little bit more about disability, one of the prompts was, what can we learn from disability communities that have been making alternate structures for meeting and making things for many years? And when I read this question the first time, I had to read it a few times, because it's definitely something that I've been thinking about, but there's just so much, right? I feel like in terms of what can we learn from disabled communities is everything. And I say that because I think about all the different ways that disabled folks have knowledge for these things. So it goes from, like, I put this like sandwich to kind of symbolize at the beginning, like the contingency plans for our meals, like being able to plan in advance for when you're out of spoons or out of capacity. I feel like all disabled folks, like the folks in my life and in my community that I speak to, like we always have things in the freezer. We always have things budgeted aside so that we can order for when we're spooned out. And just kind of like planning in advance, making sure we have food in the house, because there's a possibility we won't have spoons, or we might be injured, or we might be sick come grocery day. And just, yeah, like contingency plans for meals, but also other things is one of the things that this made me think of. I put the little calendar symbol in here because I think something that disabled folks do really well is just, especially for folks who don't have a job in the sense of like a 9-to-5 or whatever, is creating self-imposed structure in your life. And that's definitely something that I've been struggling with a bit more, because prior to the pandemic, I was working a pretty regular job, even though I was working from home. But I think of my community and my chosen family who have been on ODSP for years and haven't had a job. And I think about the fact that they're, you know, up and at it first thing in the morning, how they maintain their sleep hygiene, and just, I feel like there's so much to learn from that kind of like self-imposed structure and commitment, like to your own well-being and to your own routines. I put the symbol in the middle of someone helping someone else put on a mask. And this kind of just made me think of the fact that like disability has highlighted to me, like disabled communities have highlighted to me, like how important it is to ask for help when you need it in all different facets of life. And this kind of makes me think of mutual aid right now as well. And thinking about how online communities like caremongering groups have popped up all over the world, and how important it is to be able to say like, hey, I really need this, I can't find it, or, you know, I really need the support, where can I go? And then the next thing being just, I think disabled folks know how to do it on a dime, unfortunately. And I don't want to romanticize like the poverty, and I want to like match this up with the fact that, you know, CERB benefits are way more than what Ontario disability benefits are. And disabled folks have been like managing and surviving off of that, even though research shows that what folks really need to survive and maintain afloat is the CERB amount. And I feel like it's imperative that ODSP reflect that, and that be brought up. But when I think about something that I've learned from other disabled folks is budgeting and scraping by and figuring out how to make a little bit go a long way. One of the other things that this question made me think about is, for me as a disabled person living in a metropolitan city, is like, I've been wearing a mask to go outside for many years, especially on transit or like, you know, taking the train or a plane or whatever it might be. Always making sure I have hand sanitizer, always washing my hands as soon as I come into the house. So again, just those kind of like hygiene habits that are being highlighted and proliferated right now. Disabled folks have been doing that forever. And I guess that was one of the like more basic things that I wanted to point out. And then the last thing being, you know, what can we learn from disability communities, or what can you learn from us, is most importantly to listen to your body and trust your body. I think about like medical oppression and fat phobia and like my personal experience with navigating the healthcare system. And if anything, time and time again, I've learned that like, I know my body best. And from my conversations with other trans and gender diverse folks, other fat folks, other community members, it's like, we definitely know our bodies best. And that's something that I'd like to kind of like leave that at. And going back into kind of like artwork and what I've personally been doing throughout the pandemic, this is kind of like the catalog of work that I've been developing the last couple months. So these are like some recent shots of my Instagram feed. I wanted to find a way to kind of like show some highlights of what I've been working on. So what I actually want to do is show you a video that I created for Sketch, which is a community arts organization in Toronto. And what they do is basically create workshops and facilitate all kinds of things like textile arts, visual arts, music, performance arts. They provide mentorship and resources, and it's also kind of like a drop-in center for marginalized folks. So they had asked me to do a video on like creating art during the pandemic, in which I show some of the pieces that I've been working on. So I'd love to kind of show you that so that you can take a closer look at some of these pieces. I'm gonna just go in and play the actual video file since it doesn't want to cooperate.
Hi, my name's Pree. I go by Sticky Mangoes on Instagram, and that's the name that I make my artwork under. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm an artist in the sketch community. Today I'm going to kind of show you what I've been working on during the pandemic, and I kind of wanted to start with showing you some of the art prompts that I created kind of early in the pandemic that were part of something I called the Quarantine Art Challenge. I came up with these prompts in mid-March so that folks in the community could kind of like have something to motivate their artwork that wasn't as depressing as the state of affairs. For me, as someone who's immunocompromised, art is one of the ways that I kind of like distract myself and manage my pain. And so this has kind of been a really big part of my coping and my pain management. These are some of the pieces that I made as a part of the Quarantine Art Challenge. So this is a crayon drawing that I did for the prompt love. This one I believe was for relaxing or calm. This one was about care, and it says, I care about me so that I can care for you. And it's just about thinking about community care and how important it is to also take care of ourselves. Yeah, some of the other artwork that I do is textile based. So as a part of the Quarantine Art Challenge, I created this piece inspired by the prompt duality. Kind of limited right now in terms of what kinds of threads, what kind of floss I have. So I would have liked for this piece to be in different shades of brown, but this is kind of what I had on hand. So yeah, and this was a freehand piece that I created that I'm really proud of. Something else I've been working on is cross stitch. So I've never done cross stitch before, but I have done embroidery, and this piece says, disabled 2S QT BIPOC must be protected at all costs. And this just comes from thinking about you know, who the most marginalized folks in our community are, and my feelings as someone who is living with cancer in remission as a racialized, queer, and trans person. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been working on. I've also been doing some watercolor painting, like I've already shown you, at like different scales. So this is one of the smaller ones when I was feeling pretty down about what's kind of been going on. I've also kind of been practicing and trying to develop my skills by working on like floral pieces and nature. So yeah, these are some of the other pieces that I've been working on. And yeah, I think that's everything that I want to show you today. I hope I get to see y'all sometime soon. And you can check out some more of my art online at instagram.com/stickymangoes. Thanks.
So yeah, that was a video that I created for Sketch for part of their fundraising campaign for Art in Pandemic. And that's kind of what I want to leave you with in terms of my practice and what I've been up to throughout the pandemic, and how my disability and community relationships kind of inform what I've been up to. I want to say thank you so much for listening, and also thank you to the studio for having me back again. And yeah, if you're interested in any of the work that I do, feel free to drop me a line at anywhere listed below. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pree. I can tell from the reaction that we're getting in the chat that you touched on some feelings that are mutual with our participants today. And I hope we get to pick that up in the chat. So thank you so much. I hope everybody follows Pree's art online.
Thanks, Meera.
Thank you. I want to now introduce our final performer. So Mimi Abonsawin is an award-winning roots songstress. Although based in Toronto, you can find Mimi out on the road bringing songs and stories to diverse audiences all over this country and abroad. Her songs are heavily influenced by her French-Canadian and Abenakis Indigenous roots and flow through a center of love and creativity. Her compositions are nurtured by the beauty of her home landscape, Northeastern Ontario, and her performances are honest and raw. And with that, I will hand things over to you, Mimi.
Hello, thank you so much. I just wanted to start by saying that I'm so grateful and honored to be on a panel with such amazing and diverse artists. I just love learning more about different art forms. You know, when you're stuck in the music bubble, sometimes it's hard to see outside of it. So it's been really refreshing these last couple minutes just exploring both of your art. So thank you very much. I think I'm going to start with a song. I've been listening and I was like, I don't know what to say. So I'm going to start with a song and then talk a little bit about what we've been talking about. Here we go. This song is called A Mother's Cry. Can you guys hear the guitar right? Yeah. Okay, good. Whew. Usually there's a bit of a sing-along at the end of this when I'm performing to in-life audience. So you can just imagine that if you want. You can sing along if you want. I'll give you the googly eyes. Here we go. He's sitting on the sidewalk, hair blowing in his face. His shoes have seen better days and a better place. But I've seen this before. This man was once a boy, and he is somebody's son. Somebody's son. Somebody's son. Somebody's son. That guy in the green fighting for his queen. While he's sighing, that war child's eyes haunts his dreams. I've seen this before. This man was once a boy, and he is somebody's son. Somebody's son. Somebody's son. Somebody's son. All right, here we go. Somebody, somebody, somebody's son. Somebody, somebody, somebody's son. Somebody, somebody, somebody's son. Somebody, somebody, somebody's son. Thank you. My phone went on to low battery mode, so I was like, they disappeared. So my name is Mimi Bonsman, and I'm a singer-songwriter. And this whole kind of thing, it's funny because we were in studio mode. So I tour really heavily in the summertime, and then the wintertime is reserved to recording and, you know, cementing those songs that we've been creating and touring. So we were in dormant creative mode, and then this pandemic hit, and then I didn't know that we would get catapulted again into like creative home studio mode. So that's been a bit of an adjustment, but I after I realized, you know, after I kind of came to terms with the fact that all of our touring got canceled, all of our festivals, and, you know, for me as a performer, my favorite thing in this entire world, this is the sense of community I get when I get to travel to different, you know, small towns or cities or different communities across Ontario, is that I get to share, I get to learn, I get to experience stories. So I was really sad that I was missing out on that opportunity. But once I kind of came to terms with this, it's been, you know, a really interesting journey of recalibrating and kind of finding our new ways around things. So that's kind of where I'm at. Earlier this afternoon, I was asked to send in a live performance for a women's Indigenous shelter in Toronto who are doing their Strawberry Moon fundraising event. And I have been really looking forward to this beautiful Strawberry Moon. So it was really kind of perfect that they asked me to do this. So I thought I would play this song to honor the strong and resilient women who continue to seek, you know, support and shelter even during a global pandemic. And it's really inspiring to see people who continue to do this work, you know, despite all the challenges that I'm sure this pandemic causes. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as the Strawberry Moon is coming up. The song is called Here's to the Women. I look just like my mother when she was my age. I talk just like her, everybody says. I carry myself like my grandmother's did. I got a fire in my heart like my sister's flame. Here's to all the women who have carried us to where we are. Here's to the women who came before, who blessed the earth with light and love. Here's to the women who are warriors, fighting for freedom, fighting for the girls. When I look in your eyes, I see her face. She whispers truths when you've lost your way. Strong spirit, persistent and wise. You come from great grandmother so love never die. Here's to all the women who have carried us to where we are. Here's to the women who came before, who blessed the earth with light and love. Here's to the women who are warriors, fighting for freedom, fighting for the girls. Here's to all the women who have carried us to where we are. Here's to all the women who have carried us to where we are. Here's to the women who came before, who blessed the earth with light and love. Here's to the women who are warriors, fighting for freedom, fighting for the girls. Thank you. So one of the things that I also love to do, and well, not that I also love to do, but I'm lucky to do, is I get to do workshops with amazing young people in schools, and I've gotten to travel up to some incredible remote communities in Northern Ontario. So during this whole pandemic, I really think about them. And one of the things that social media has helped us with is to stay connected with my friends up north who have different realities and different challenges than we do down here in the South. So I've gotten to do workshops, music workshops, and visual art. So I make pom-poms, and I like to do crafts. And I've gotten to connect with my young peeps up there virtually, which is, you know, not the same as a hug, but it's close. So those are just a few examples of the things I think are really, really beautiful during this, if I can say that. Is that we get to connect our communities. So, you know, even I hear echoed in the music community, it's kind of nice that we get to spend time and watch each other's concerts, because when we're out on the road and, you know, we're in the studio, we're really, really busy, and then we don't get to connect with our musician friends. So it's been really nice to, you know, sit down and actually take the time to hear and watch my friends play music and that kind of stuff. So I've really been interested in taking this time to reflect and to slow down. Oftentimes as artists, we are project-driven people, and we just go, 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 go. And it's been nice to finally come to terms with this is okay to take a rest. So for the first little portion of, you know, this break, I took a social media detox, and I wasn't, you know, worried about being productive. I just spent time with my family up in Northern Ontario, and I just spent time reconnecting with those things that I kind of forgotten. So that's been really nice. So I thought I would play a song called Willow. Let me just tune up here. This is one of the songs that I've been holding on to for quite some time. And the thing I love the most about being a songwriter is you have to face a lot of honest truths, and sometimes something comes out and you weren't really ready to hear it, but you needed to hear it in that time. So that's where the healing is. That's where the medicine is for me. And this is one of those songs. I haven't recorded it yet, but I will. It's called Willow. I'm not fearless, it's worse. Fear getting in the way, like the clouds on a sunny day. I'm not always honest with myself. once I get carried away, like a feather in the breeze. I wanna be like the willow, I wanna bend just a little, and I'll be stiff in my ways. Stop running away, I wanna grow and be wiser. I want my soul to be richer, and I'll worry about the bank. See love in everything. If I'm gonna be who I wanna be, better start by accepting me. I'm not on time, I'm late, always running behind, up and down like the tide. I wanna be like the willow, I wanna bend just a little, not be stiff in my ways. Stop running away, I wanna grow and be wiser. I want my soul to be richer, and I'll worry about the bank. See love in everything. If I'm gonna be who I wanna be, stop by accepting me. I wanna be like the willow, I wanna bend just a little, I'll be stiff in my ways. Stop running away, I wanna grow and be wiser. I want my soul to be richer, not worry about the bank. See love in everything. If I'm gonna be who I wanna be, stop by accepting me. If I'm gonna be who I wanna be, I better start by accepting me. Thank you. I hope it sounds okay. Let me just tune up here. Another thing that I've been finding really interesting is having to learn a whole new instrument. So, you know, the virtual concerts are really cool because we get to continue to connect with our audience and our community, but having to learn how to use a technology, which, you know, I have like a mixing board plugged into this little adapter that goes into my phone, is just like mind blowing. So it's been a learning experience, which is really cool. To be able to continue to find ways to, you know, express ourselves and to share our music. I've really been, I'm going to say enjoying the journey, but more as like I've been enjoying learning. There are moments of frustration, I have to say. There we go. I'm wondering, Meera, if you could tell me how much time I have left. Yeah. Oh, let me see. Is that a dose? Okay, thank you. I'm gonna just grab my hand drum and wrap up this little session with a hand drum song, if that's okay. 1 second. It's very humid today, so my drum is a little bit low, but let's see. Okay. So this song is, this is my drum. This song is called Mr. Loon, and it's my favorite song to perform with a band or whether I'm touring by myself because it's an audience participation song. So I usually get the audience to return the loon call, so it would be a call and response. So I know you guys are muted. If you feel like doing this at your own end and participate, feel free. It's a lot of fun. And it kind of brings us back to those nights where you get to sit by the pond and listen to the sounds of the loons and, you know, under the moon. It's just a beautiful feeling. So this song is called Mr. Loon. Mr. Loon, sing me a song while I sit by the water just till dawn. Mr. Loon, make me feel alive beneath the stars, beneath the northern sky. Ow, 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 ow. Mr. Loon, sing me a song. Take me back to where I belong. Amongst the trees, amongst you, my friend. Take me home so I can pretend to be on one birch island. Ow, 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 All right, thank you guys so much for listening. And again, thank you for letting me be part of this beautiful panel. I'm really, truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mimi. That was a really nice way to end everything. And it's, as you mentioned, really clear the kind of like breadth of different kinds of art that are happening. And it's nice to bring everyone together and realize how much everyone has in common in their practice and what we can all learn from that.